It's week one, game week. We finally made it, everybody. Congratulations to you, Josh, and to the Locked On Sooners listeners. We've got some questions from Twitter and YouTube to discuss on today's episode of Locked On Sooners.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to Locked On Sooners. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Again, that's Gametime app with promo code LOCKEDONCollege. My name is John Williams. You can follow me on Twitter at John9Williams. My buddy here is Josh Helmer. You can follow him on Twitter at JoshOnRef. You can also hear him Monday through Friday from 9 to noon on 94.7. So on the KREF Sports app. My apologies to the Ref Army. Don't come at me, please. Game week is upon us. We're now getting into the nitty gritty. We're going to get a depth chart released on Tuesday by Brent Venables and the Oklahoma staff. So that's going to be an exciting thing to look forward to discussing later in the week. We're going to have player press conferences, coaching press conferences, all of that. But today we're going to talk through some of your questions that we received from Twitter as well as YouTube. If you've ever got a question for us that you'd like us to address on the show, please drop it on YouTube or at Locked On Sooners. Just let us know you got a question. First one, this one comes from longtime listener L. Stevenson at L. Stevenson 64. He says, what are the chances that the offense is even more run heavy this year, given the lack of proven depth at wide receiver versus the relative promise of a Gavin Sawchuk, Javonte Barnes, Marcus Major, plus the freshman running back room, Josh?
It's going to be run heavy, I think, early on. I mean, obviously, Jeff Lebby and Dylan Gabriel, the familiarity and the experience that those two have together, and just individually Dylan Gabriel's collegiate experience means that he's going to be comfortable with anything that you toss in the playbook from day one. But obviously you're breaking in a lot of new faces at wide receiver. And oh, by the way, I just go back to the Cheez-It Bowl, John, and look at how effectively Oklahoma ran the football and look at some of the, okay, this is going to be a work in progress. This is going to take some time in terms of pass protection for Oklahoma in that game. So to me, that lends itself to where, yeah, absolutely early on, they're going to lean on the run game, John.
It makes a lot of sense to me to do that, especially as you try to answer some of those questions at wide receiver as far as what your hierarchy is going to look like. And honestly, the best way to protect your quarterback is establish a running game that's so efficient that he's not having to sit back there on 3rd and 7+. And it's obvious that it's going to be a pass, because the best way to attack a defense is, one, to avoid 3rd down altogether. And if you can't do that, create 3rd and manageable, 3rd and 4 or less. And that's going to help Dylan Gabriel and this offense be much more efficient on 3rd down, which was a big issue last year. And especially on 4th down. If Brent Venables is going to be willing to go for 4th downs as often as he was last year, you want to have more 4th and manageables as opposed to 4th and 4, 4th and 5, from the 45-yard line as you're going into the end zone. So I do think it's going to be very run heavy. I don't know if it'll be more run heavy than last year or if it will be about the same, but I think given the depth that they have at running back, you don't have a guy like an Eric Gray, who's an experienced player that can really lead the unit. You have a Marcus Major who's got a lot of time in the program, but maybe not a lot of time on the field. You got a Javonte Barnes who put in really good work last year. And then you saw what Gavin Sawchuk was able to do in just his one start for the Sooners. I think that's not start, but one game of significant playing time. I think that's enough to go on right there with those 3 guys. And then you add in a Tawee Walker, who everybody is really thinking is running the ball well in fall camp. And I think it gives Jeff Lebby the onus to lean on the run, especially in games against like an Arkansas State where, okay, you might be able to get up quick and then you just pound away as much as you can the rest of that game. Keep your quarterback healthy, keep your offensive line doing what offensive linemen do love the most, and that's run block. An offensive lineman would more often than not prefer to run block than pass block. You bring in a guy like Walter Rouse from Stanford. What is Stanford known for? Running the football. Savion Byrd, what's he bringing to the table? Physicality, toughness, grit, tenacity. You want him running the ball, or you want them running the football behind him. So I like the idea that running the football is going to be the impetus for this offense.
No doubt. I'm with you. And for Oklahoma, where I think everybody wants them to go under Brent Venables forward, it's physicality, right? It's toughness. It's a program that's built around, we're going to go win the line of scrimmage. I mean, there are years as you go back, and I would even say, Bowers aside, and Stetson Bennett did some really nice things these last couple of seasons, but Georgia's tougher than you. They're going to go win the line of scrimmage. They're going to go in a 3rd down and 3 situation. They're going to run for it on multiple occasions. They're going to feel comfortable doing that. So Oklahoma, again, yeah, I hear what you're saying, and I'm with you. It sets you up for those 3rd and 1s, 3rd and 2s. But, I don't mind an Oklahoma program that doesn't feel like it has to turn and throw the ball every time in 3rd down and 3, that feels like, you know what, we're built on this level of physicality to where we're going to go get 3 yards whenever we want to go get 3 yards. So just the physical nature of all of it for Oklahoma, when you think about just the characteristics of what you want this program to be founded upon, well, it starts with, I think, a physical running game. And oh, by the way, the names that you've got in the backfield, as Mr. Stevenson pointed out, you've got a Javonte Barnes, you've got a Sawchuk, you've got a Major, you've got freshmen that you like here, you've got Tawi Walker. So there's a bunch to like in the backfield to feel comfortable, John, to lean on.
And you hear Brent Venables talk at OU Media Day, and that was one of the things he mentioned is they want to be able to run the football and run it at will. He talked about running the football, playing defense, winning on special teams. If they can improve their running game, which was pretty good last year, but if they can improve it, it'll be even more dangerous going through 2023. They're going to have an opportunity to be a very dynamic group in front of an offensive line or behind an offensive line that should be really good as well in, under Bill Bedenbaugh. It's always going to be good, right? We expect it to be good. Can they be better than last year? That's going to be a great question. We've got a couple more questions to discuss on today's episode of Locked On Sooners. First, we're going to talk to you about our friends over at Athletic Brewing.
You're ready for the game changer of the week. It's brought to us by Athletic Brewing Company. Much like we're looking for all sorts of game changers this week, and it just might be in the backfield for Oklahoma, those initial game changers, though. Hey, I would gladly welcome a couple of wide receivers, a linebacker, really anybody defensively would be nice as a game changer this week. But Athletic Brewing, they've completely changed the non-alcoholic beer game. They make non-alcoholic beers that, well, actually taste good, right? And when you're in the market to not feel like you're missing out when there's the big party going on, well, it's nice to have something that you actually enjoy tasting. And Athletic Brewing Company, they've got that. They've changed the game, baby, with stuff that tastes good. And again, I can't stress this enough. There's nothing better than no hangovers ever. That is an important detail. So you can find Athletic Brewing Company's non-alcoholic brews at a store near you or buy online at athleticbrewing.com. First-time customers can use code LOCKEDON to get 15% off your first online order. That's code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON at checkout for 15% off at athleticbrewing.com. Near beer, exclusions and conditions apply. Athletic Brewing Company, fit for all times. So it was obviously a tremendous weekend for Oklahoma on the recruiting trail. We got the news that, along the way, I think we expected. And then, I don't know, one heartbreak here, one in particular or there, led us to maybe starting to get a little less confident in the David Stone sweepstakes, and of course, a late charge from Miami. All of those factors had Sooner fans a little leery that this was actually going to land their way. But what was Oklahoma's battle to be won all along, John, in a recruitment that was going to define this recruiting class for OU, it was, in fact, always Oklahoma. And now the question for some out there becomes, well, could this David Stone pledge to Oklahoma? Does that, I don't know, make a Williams Nwaneri flipping from Missouri to Oklahoma? Does that start turning those wheels in the mind around a little bit more?
And that's just the question we got from Sandy Green 8553 on YouTube. She says, do you think getting Stoney will make Williams think about flipping, or who else do you think comes to OU because of this commitment? It's always hard to say who's going to land with the Oklahoma Sooners because of one prospect committing. You know, when it's Peyton Bowen, Eli Bowen, okay, you feel pretty confident that Eli might follow his brother. When it was Michael Hawkins and Davin Mitchell, okay, you felt pretty good that Davin Mitchell was going to follow Michael Hawkins because, you know, childhood friends. Michael Patterson McDonald, David Stone, again, childhood friends. At the same time, Caden Durham, another one of their childhood friends, decided to go to LSU and go elsewhere. So it's always kind of hard to determine who's going to come just because one player decides to come. But I will say it is one of those positions, one of those players, David Stone in particular, that moves the needle in this class for a lot of people. It might have been part of the reason that Jaden Jackson ended up at Oklahoma. If David Stone wasn't heavily considered to be heading toward Oklahoma, would Jaden Jackson have considered it? I don't know. Only Jaden Jackson knows that answer. So how much more likely does it make a Williams Nwaneri flip? I mean, that to me, that's going to be a big question that we follow all fall. And it's like I've said multiple times on the show, I feel like expectations for flips need to be low. You know, if you are expecting a flip to happen, it's more often than not, you're going to be disappointed. And that's not to say that Oklahoma is not going to be able to do it. They did it with Peyton Bowen a year ago, but flips are the exception. They're not the rule. If they can land Nwaneri at this point, man, that would be fantastic. It'd be great. It's just a matter of, okay, I feel I'm going to doubt it until it happens, sort of a thing.
One thing for me, John, that is so obvious is, okay, you might have been making the pitch all along. Don't you want to come play with David Stone? And yet, until you've got the commitment, it's kind of, okay, well, yeah, he tells me he's going to Oklahoma, but do I know that I know that I know that he's going to Oklahoma? So absolutely, I would think for Williams Nwaneri, all of the factors that you talked about, which are, I want to be around great players because it's going to make me a better player. It's going to make my job easier. So I do think now when you go in to try and work the flip, that what you've maybe sold in the past, you have a little bit more weight behind it, just because, again, you have David Stone officially committed now. And you start thinking about the picture of that defensive line for Oklahoma going forward with a Jaden Jackson, with a Stone. And depending upon what happens this season for Oklahoma, if we're talking about names like Gilliam and Halton and PJ Adebawore that impress at OU, well, when you make that pitch the next time to Williams Nwaneri, again, now you've got a little bit more momentum behind that statement to say, you know, we already told you that this is the place that you need to be because of everything else that's going to be surrounded around you, right? Everything that you'll be surrounded by. You're still close to where you've been, at least Summit North. You're not that far away. And look at all of these pieces around you that it's not an immediate name, image, likeness deal for you. But guess what? It's the big deal for you. It's that first round NFL draft pick status for you. It's that second round draft pick status for you, where the big bucks, the longtime bucks, are coming from. So I think in closing, it gives you that pitch a little bit stronger, John, to where you come back and you say, okay, look at everything that's in the fold for Oklahoma. And if this season, if some of these young names on campus too show, okay, these guys are going to be difference makers going forward. Now you got David Stone. Now you got Jaden Jackson. Now you got Gilmore, on and on and on, right? You've got some pretty impressive chips on the table, some pretty impressive chess pieces on the table to say, yeah, if I'm Williams Nwaneri, they've got a pretty strong argument for me.
Yeah, the talent is going to be there. And it's looking very likely that they're going to add Nigel Smith sometime next week as well, or in the next, 12, 14 days. That's going to be a huge addition to this class, and it's going to move the needle. You know, when you stack talent on top of talent on top of talent, it's going to eventually move the needle for a guy like Williams Nwaneri. Will that end up being enough to get a flip and a commitment and a signing? That'll be the big question that we'll be watching all fall and into the early signing period and maybe National Signing Day. We'll see how it goes. Another question here. Now that it's game week, what are y'all looking forward to the most on Saturday? This is from Brian at Loco, Ohio.
You want to tee off first, John?
Man, I'm just looking forward to seeing a legitimate pass rush? Am I going to say, okay, if they go out there and they get 5 or 6 sacks against Arkansas State, that they've arrived? No, but I do want to see a dominant performance from this defense in week 1. But just this season, I want to see them bump up to only allowing 23 points per game. Cut a touchdown off of your season average from a year ago. Be a better defense. Show signs of life that Brent Venables' defense is in Norman, and it's going to get better and better.
That would be it for me. It's defense, and it's show me that, hey, there's not going to be a whole lot happening for Arkansas State in this contest, period, point blank. And then, beyond that, I think as we needle down on things on the defense, it's the new faces defensively, transfer portal, young players that you've signed. So just the new faces defensively and, in particular out of the transfer portal that we think, John, beyond just this opener, they're going to be legitimate factors all season long for Oklahoma. What do they look like up front? What is that with the Rondell Bothroyds of the world, with the Fords of the world? Desan McCullough, what does he look like for Oklahoma? Pearson, is that the guy in the defensive backfield? So, I could go on and on about that. We've probably harped about that a lot this offseason. But again, for me, I think the transfer portal additions, that's arguably the biggest storyline of the offseason for OU outside of just the recruiting trail itself. So I want to see those guys.
Yeah, the transfer portal is going to be a big factor for the Sooners this year. How well those guys play and have adjusted to Brent Venables' defense is going to be a big key in how successful the Sooners are this year. We'll have one final question for you on today's episode of Locked On Sooners coming up. But first, let me talk to you about our friends over at Gametime. If you're looking for last-minute tickets to Oklahoma Sooners football or whatever sporting event, Major League Baseball, FC Tulsa, whatever it is, you got to check out the Gametime app. Go download it in your favorite app store. I mean, I'm looking at tickets right now on the Gametime app, and I mean, there's tickets as low as $18. But the beauty of this is it's not only showing me the ticket, it's showing me the view of the seat of where the ticket's going to be. A lot of places where you're looking to buy tickets, you can't tell what you're looking at or where exactly it's going to be, what your view of the game is going to be. But I mean, it's showing me lower end zone, and I can see where I'm going to be sitting and the view I'm going to have of this game if I'm going to Oklahoma versus Arkansas State. So whatever you're looking for, whether it's Oklahoma, Arkansas State, or it's your favorite, concert venue that you're looking to buy tickets, go to the Gametime app, use code LOCKEDONCollege. You can get $20 off your first purchase today. Again, go download the Gametime app at the Apple Store, Google Play, wherever you get your apps. Use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off of your first purchase. Last question we're going to touch on here, Josh, and this is a very fascinating one to me. First, we'll talk about the first question that Gunny threw out there. Did either of you yell "Boomer" really freaking loud like I did when Stoney picked up the OU hat? Well, we can touch on that one first, Josh. What was your initial reaction?
Oh, I definitely had a big grin on the face and was excited about it. Actually, I think one of my first reactions was to start firing things into our Discord chat. Yeah. But no, with the girlfriend in tow in the house, I didn't want to get too rowdy, but I was definitely on the inside feeling that way. Yes.
Yeah. Since I've had kids, I've learned how to silent celebrate so as not to freak them out, so do a lot of silent fist pump in and Frank the Tank in around the house. And yeah, so that's kind of where I came from. The second question he asked is the more football related for 2023 question. Do you see Oklahoma having any All-Americans this year? And appreciate you, Gunny of Stutzman Army, for asking the question at Eskimoki36.
I think they will somewhere. It's tough to identify that slam dunk choice right now. Going into last season, Marvin Mims is a pretty easy choice in that regard, right? And I don't know that Oklahoma has that player right now. I don't think Dylan Gabriel is going to get there at quarterback. And, offensively, that would probably be the most established name. Stogner, I mean, even if Stogner's great, tight end is just such a talented position nationally that it would be hard for him to do that unless it's an extraordinary season. So I don't know. I'm honestly almost leaning like Stutzman or McCullough's way defensively. maybe a Bonthroyd. I think OU will get at least one or two. If it's a second team All-American or third team All-American, or who knows, somebody has a great season and is a first teamer that would really be a game-changing type season. I think Oklahoma's going to have a couple of those guys. I just don't know that I feel really strongly about any one name right now, John.
I think Danny Stutzman is the name for me. Especially if you're looking at a first team All-American choice, I think Stutzman's got the profile, showing up on a lot of watch lists in the preseason. He's got the production from a year ago that got him on everybody's radar going into 2023. And I think with everything in front of him, probably going to be much better. The defensive line in particular going to be much better at defensive tackle, defensive end. That's going to allow him an opportunity to play cleaner and to make more plays in both the running game and the passing game. He's not going to be expected to work through the muck as much as a linebacker. And I mean, you talk to any, defensive lineman, you talk to linebackers, and, a guy like Brian Bosworth, he'd tell you that his job is made much easier when the guys up front are playing really, really well. And they're an elite group. I'm not saying Oklahoma's group is going to be elite this year, but they're going to be better than what they were last year. And I think that's going to allow Danny Stutzman to shine a little bit better. If I were going to go with the guy on the offensive side of the football, my heart wants to tell me Jaleel Farouk, but because, again, wide receiver is so stacked with Marvin Harrison Jr. at Ohio State, Emeka Agubka also there. And I mean, there's dudes everywhere across the country that are great wide receivers with a lot of profile right now. Maybe a Walter Rouse, like if he is as good as maybe he could be, left tackle might be a spot where you might be able to steal a selection there, but I don't think that one is as likely. But I do think Danny Stutzman could snatch one of the 3 or 4 linebacker spots, just depending on how the voters go down on that front. Any other thoughts on that before we get out of here, Josh?
Yeah, I mean, what about a Bowman or a Washington in the defensive backfield? Either of those two?
Maybe. I mean, it's certainly possible for a Billy Bowman to make that leap and have a significant enough season to where he's considered an All-American. I still feel better about Stutzman than I would him. And with Washington, again, I think it's the position is so stacked, and a lot of voters might lean SEC way on that front. But if he comes out and he has, 5-6 interception season and proves to be a lockdown guy on the outside, then I don't see why not. It's Oklahoma. If the defense improves to a top 50, top 40, top 30 defense, a lot of those guys are going to get a lot more recognition because it's going to take, they're going to get more positive publicity because the defense has improved so much. But yeah, that's kind of where I stand on that.
I think you nailed it, whether it's Rouse or Guyton, or I would even say Rame if he lives up to the expectations that have kind of been out there for him at center. If Oklahoma puts together this great offensive line, we're talking about them being run heavy and all those things. And I think that's a definite possibility for OU. And if that's keyed by one of those 3 guys or all 3 of those guys could maybe be in the mix up front for Oklahoma. So offensive line is somewhere that I think maybe one of those names could be in the mix as well. But I do think Oklahoma will wind up with a couple before it's all said and done. But again, it's like Danny Stutzman, and then I don't know.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to find out just how good this team is. And we get to find out starting Saturday when the Oklahoma Sooners take on the Arkansas State Red Wolves. Be here Monday night, 9 p.m. Central Time for our weekly live show. Again, we'll have great coverage throughout the week to get you ready for game day on Saturday morning. Follow Josh on Twitter at Josh on Ref. The show is at Locked On Sooners. I'm at John9 Williams. Again, all week long, we're here every single day for Oklahoma Sooners coverage. Subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts, free and available on all platforms and on YouTube. Hit that notification bell to let you know when new episodes drop. But until next time, he's Josh Helmer. I'm John Williams. We'll talk to you then. Boomer Sooner.